do this thing. Cool. Try this again. Sweet. What's up, everybody? KrissyKrash here. Adam Kristoffer, one of my great friends. Super excited. Third podcast episode ever.
Wow, lucky number 3.
Yeah, third podcast guest.
Wow.
Holy shit.
I feel special.
You should feel special.
Yeah.
I'm super excited. So, really excited to get to interview you today because obviously you're one of my favorite people on the planet.
You're my favorite too.
Aw, so there's that. So lots of love and snuggles in the room. But yeah, so I figured today we would talk, a little bit about, so many things. First of all, you guys, Adam is one of the few people that I actually trust to fix my body. So whenever anything breaks for, I don't know, the last, how many years? Like 7, maybe?
7, 8. Yeah.
7, 8. We met, I went into like a massage, I must say massage parlor. I went to go get a legit massage. And we ended up just becoming friends, and you left there and you started going out and doing your own thing, and, has basically fixed all of my things for many years. And I very much rely on you as a resource for all things movement related, but also on like a spiritual level, on a friend level. So this is really special.
Yeah,
by the way.
This is great.
This is awesome. I'm so excited. So first things first. So let's talk a little bit about like the sports massage stuff. Like, how did you get into that? Like, tell everybody like a little bit about like your experience with that. How did you start it? Why were you interested in it?
Yeah. So I've been doing massage for like 20 years now. I've worked in all kinds of fields, resorts and chiropractors and all that kind of stuff. And the spas and stuff didn't really satisfy me. I was just seeing one person after another. So I wanted more depth. And so I just started getting into more injuries and pain, working with people's patterns. Mm-hmm. So we can really help people do whatever it is they want to do. When you're in pain, you don't get to do what you want to do. So that's number one priority. Yeah. And so getting people into that and working with athletes, working with everyday people, desk jockeys, I call them. They're athletes too, just in a very different way.
Right. And everybody has patterns. Like, that's the thing I think is really interesting, is I think that people don't realize that we have these patterns of movement. Like, we all sit in a certain way. I remember one time I came in for you to do some work on me, and I had my feet crossed, and you were like, try crossing your feet the other way. And it never occurred to me my whole life that I always crossed like my left foot over my right.
Yeah. So yeah, and I call those our patterns of pain.
Right.
And we all have, they're super unconscious, the way we cross our fingers, the way we cross our arms, the way we walk. That's kind of how we can notice somebody from afar. Mm-hmm. Like that's the way they walk, right? They have a pattern to them and a rhythm. But the way we sit, the way we stand, the way we walk, the way we sleep, those 4 in and of themselves, carry a lot of pain for people and also when people have injuries, we think that once we're no longer in pain, we're going to automatically revert back to a healthier way of moving or the way we moved before.
Right.
And we don't. Our compensation pattern has already set in, our new normal has already set in. And so we kind of stay in that same pattern unless we retrain ourselves to do that, to rewire our system, basically.
Yeah. I have a lot of girls actually, like, especially in roller derby, we get a lot of like broken ankles and knee injuries. And I have girls that ask me all the time, well, should I just work out just using like my other leg? And I'm always like, oh, probably not. Because then you're going to create like this huge imbalance. Like, what's your thought on?
Yeah, that's a huge imbalance that you're going to have to overcorrect later, right? Mm-hmm. So, the best way is to heal it. And I know people still want to work out and still want to do things and be active, but you can't overbuild one area while neglecting another, because that's going to be an imbalance, as you said, also on one strength side, but then you're going to have a huge come up on the side that's been weak and not used. And that's going to take it even longer. So you still want to stay active, and there's still a lot of things you can do when you're injured. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's going to actually make your road to recovery probably a lot longer.
Interesting. So what would you suggest, like, for injured athletes? Like, let's say someone has a broken, because we get a lot of lower body injuries, like a broken ankle or a busted knee or something like that. What would you suggest for those guys?
In terms of what?
Just in terms of like movement and things like that. Like,
for when they're recovering?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, first is just to start out small, you know, noticing what you can do and stay within that range. I think a lot of people will stop doing everything. And that leads to a lot of problems as well. So you want to be able to still do things that you can do and focus on what you can do. Sometimes, you know, going into pools and things like that are really beneficial because you don't have impact.
Yes, I remember that when I tore my MCL. It's like the pool was like my best friend.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's a hugely underused resource for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Even if you have upper body injuries, you can still work out in a pool, right? There's still stuff, and you can still work out in a gym if you have upper body. But yeah, you want to try and move as normally as possible. A lot of times we'll do a real big protecting pattern around something that we have to retrain later. And usually that's almost like the last component after the actual pain has gone away, is retraining the movement, letting their mind actually trust that something's not injured anymore is a big component of recovering from injury. Because if I have a bad knee, I have an injured knee, in my image, it's always going to be less than. It's not going to be as good. So I have to protect it. Even if I'm like, oh, there's no pain in it. Oh, but I hurt my knee. I got a bad knee. And so getting your mind around it and trusting it again and working with the patterns of like, oh, it's kind of like you have to, like, you can show a kid like, oh, you can do this. Like retraining yourself literally like, oh, this is safe.
Like, it's okay.
It's okay. Yep. You could do this. Look at, no problem. And literally taking that kind of concept into recovering.
Got it.
Learning to trust it and seeing it as healthy again.
Nice. So what about, like, I mean, a lot of sports, people use like one side of their body different than the other, right?
Yeah.
Like in roller derby, we turn left.
Sure.
I turned left for 13 years.
Right.
Right. So what do you feel like people can do in terms of like counteracting that stuff? Is there anything like in terms of like stretching or strength training or
skate the other way?
Skate the other way.
take a few laps the other way.
Or like, let's say you're like a golfer or a tennis player, like try to do it both ways just to like use your body.
Yeah, and I think that goes in terms of even people that aren't athletes, you know, people that sit a lot, that do anything repetitively. You're gonna want to do the opposite, right? For tennis players and stuff like that, you know, they go forehand, backhand. They can adjust that way.
How do you sit better? What is sitting better?
Yeah, sitting better would be, a lot of people when they try and sit or sit with good posture, they'll hold themselves really tight in their core, pull my shoulders back. So they're holding a muscle contraction, right? They're basically trying to hold themselves up with the isometric contraction. That's going to go away as soon as you don't pay attention to it.
Right. Like right now, I just sat back down like this.
As soon as you don't pay attention to it, it'll go away. Yeah. And also you're not meant to hold you know, strengthening the core has been a big thing for sitting. You're never going to hold a plank that long, right? You never need that for core strength to hold myself up for hours at a time. Right. It's not the way to do it. So what I teach people to do is how to use your skeletal structure to combat the forces of gravity, right? Because really we're trying to just hold ourselves in gravity. Our bones are developed by withstanding force. It's what they're designed to do through gravity. So with sitting, I teach people how to find their sit bones. They're called sit bones for a reason, right? They don't have a lot of nerve endings there. They're really kind of not sensitive at all, so they can withstand pressure. So sitting in that and then getting it so your spine is stacked into your pelvis as well. And that lessens a lot of muscle tension, because now the force is going through your bones, through the structure, right? And your muscles just kind of like keep you in balance just a little bit, you know? Yeah. It's kind of like, I use the analogy sometimes of like a bridge, right? The bridge is a structure, but it has wires that kind of keep it in balance. It has movements, you know, bridges have lots of movements and wind forces and stuff like that. But the wires just do the micro adjustments.
Right.
And that's
the bones
really,
are doing.
and then our arms are free to do things, and it actually becomes really light.
Huh.
Yeah.
So how do you know when you're sitting properly? Like, how do you know?
It's usually a feeling of lightness.
Is it?
Yeah.
So it's just not forcing
not
it.
Not efforting would be the best way to describe it.
And the same thing with walking too, right? Like I know we had some conversations at one point about walking.
Yeah. Walking's a big one.
Because everyone's like, well, fuck that, dude. I know how to walk.
All right. I get from here to there, no problem. Yeah. You know? But yeah, you know, people have all interesting patterns when it comes to walking. Yeah. It's pretty dysfunctional for most people.
Mm-hmm. And you can see it like right away when you
see I watch people all the time. I'm like, oh, this is turned out, and you're not swinging your arm, and you're holding your chest up tight, you know, and like there's no head movement.
Does it like plague you when you're out in public? Like you just can't stop seeing it, or
you can't unnotice, right?
You just learn to.
Yeah. It is what it is for people.
It's like when a psychic like starts hearing voices.
Yeah, except I don't go up to him and be like, hey, you know, you should really change this. Like, do you have knee pain? Because it looks like you probably have some knee pain or some hip pain. Here's my card type of thing.
I feel like this could be a really good bar trick. Like you could go in and be like, I'll bet you $5 I can tell you where you have pain.
Yeah, I could.
And you could tell them that you were psychic, and they would totally be like, no way, man. And you would
I'll have to try that
make
sometime.
$1 million.
I'll have to try that sometime.
Yeah.
But walking, it would be, we don't take big enough strides.
No.
Usually, especially we're in California. People California stroll, I call it. It's very casual. Mm-hmm. It's very easy. We're just kind of going along. A lot of heels clicking and just flopping, flip-flop walking.
I can hear my flip-flops dragging on the ground when I walk. I literally think of you every time my flip-flops drag on the ground, which means I think about you all day, every day.
That's great.
But like, yeah, because I know it's wrong. I know it's so
bad. Yeah, but you know, if you look at people that walk in New York mm-hmm. or in a city, mm-hmm. they're usually walking with purpose, right? They're walking to get they're moving themselves through space.
Right.
And so they're engaging their legs. They're engaging their glutes. You know, most people's glutes are shut down because we're living in such a sitting society now.
Yeah.
But walking is very therapeutic when done in a very functional way.
Purposeful.
How
do you reactivate your glutes?
Engaging them. You can do muscle activation techniques.
Like just like right now, I'm squeezing my butt. Does that help?
I don't know if that really helps, you know, but there's very simple muscle activations you can do. Mm-hmm. You know, in terms of walking, if people just started to increase their stride a little bit and mm-hmm. think about moving themselves through space, they'll engage their glutes pretty fast.
Nice.
But there's a lot of muscle activation techniques you could do, which would be great for roller derby, right? Of really getting those engaged before you start working. Mm-hmm.
What's like an easy one? Like what's a simple thing that someone could do, like say like during a warm up?
Yeah. So I think you've seen it probably, you know, when you're on all fours and then you just take one leg and move it up.
Yeah.
Just something simple like that.
Even just to wake it up.
Just to wake it up and get it activated, mm-hmm. knowing that it's firing. You could do another one where you're face down laying, your leg would be straight and you just barely raise your leg up to get the glute firing. Not so much you're trying to like scorpion yourself, but just a little bit.
Laying on your stomach.
Yeah.
Got it.
And just bringing your leg up a little bit so you feel your glute activating.
Waking up.
Yeah, just waking it up. Activate it.
Nice. I need to work on glute work real bad.
Yeah.
Like I have a really good butt, but my glutes are fucking weak. I don't know how that's possible. Maybe it's just genetics. I don't know. So, okay, but you've started doing some other stuff. So you and I started talking recently about like somatic tension relief and can you explain what that is and a little bit about that? Because I'm so fascinated by
so somatic tension relief is a release of stored tension mm-hmm. that we have in our body.
Okay.
You know, in the fields of somatic work and the work of Peter Levine and Bessel van der Kolk. Somatic means the body.
Okay.
It's just the body. That's why they call it somatic. It's just the body. In terms of tension, there are stress, old traumas, old negative imprints that we store in the body because mm-hmm. it's never been completed.
And not like a physical, let's say, maybe a physical trauma, but you mean when you say imprint, you mean like something that happens to us at some point.
Right.
Not necessarily like you run into like a door frame, but like something happened when you were a little kid that made you really like sad or scared or reactive.
Absolutely, right? So it's kind of like you think about the gazelle gets chased by the lion.
Right.
It's fight or flight is activated, and say it's running and chasing, and the gazelle finally gets away. And if you watch it on like a National Geographic show or something like that, it'll shake at the end.
Like shake itself out.
Literally, it'll shake itself out. It doesn't store it. It's gone, right? It completes all of that, stops the process, stops the fight or flight, because that's the way a fight or flight has actually been designed for us, right? When we're under threat, after that, it shouldn't be activated,
right?
Unless we're in like mortal kind of danger. But we've completely hijacked the system.
And now we're in fight or flight like all the time.
All the time. When we're worried, when we're stressed, when we're shut down, all these things are just constantly, bombarding our system with cortisol. And so somatic tension relief is allowing the body to process all of that without necessarily having to go into the events. There's other work where you will go into events and complete it that way, and it's hugely therapeutically,
like EMDR and stuff like that.
EMDR, right? Somatic experiencing, just other things that'll kind of associate you or bring up images, and so you can work with those things as well. But this is a way for the body to release it without necessarily having to go into the trauma, right? Your body will release it through a series of exercises that you can do.
Interesting. Okay, so with somatic tension relief, like what would that look like if you were working with someone? Walk me through something like that.
So we do a set of exercises that it usually starts with the legs. Well, it always starts with the legs. We run through a series of exercises that kind of fatigue the legs.
Okay.
And then we put them on the ground, and kind of you lay with your legs kind of in a butterfly position, right? You're going to stretch the adductors. And then what'll happen is your legs will start kind of shaking. They'll start moving. And as you kind of will bring your legs up through a series of processes, so that you're eventually, like you're in a sit-up position, that moving and shaking will go through your whole body, and you'll end up doing all kinds of involuntary contractions that you don't really know why.
Right. It's just old stuff.
It's just old stuff. Anytime you've kind of like had something happen and you felt that kind of like really short stuff like that, all that kind of stuff is still in the body. And then through these just basically shaking and doing all the things that your body wanted to do, but we kind of held it back given the situation. It just goes through the process of doing that.
So what does that do for someone? Like if someone's doing that on a regular basis, like how is that going to help with their everyday life, making it better?
It'll help you build more resilience.
Okay.
In the sense of being able to handle situations better.
So you won't like lose your shit as much?
That would be a great way to put it.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Because it's almost like if your body, let's say, is a cup and it's almost full to the brim with the amount of like tension and shit that it can handle. And if we always stay 3/4 full, then we've only got about 1/4 of that tension space left to fill up on a daily basis. But if we like empty that cup out, now we've got a lot more space to be able to like handle stuff on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Yeah. So you would lower your threshold.
Right.
You would definitely lower your threshold so you can just exist in the world a little more easily.
Yeah. Everyone wants to exist in the world a little more easily.
Right?
It's a hard place.
It's yeah. Earth is no joke.
It's a terrifying shit show.
The human experience is no joke.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Because we're just like these animals that happen to also be conscious.
Right.
It's a fascinating place to live.
It's
So if someone wanted to find out more about somatic tension relief, like where can they find you?
Through my website, octsm.com. I'm going to be putting more stuff on there, in the process of just getting this work out to people.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. You have also been, so one thing that you and I talk a lot about is like connecting with other people and like more of like a spiritual community, just to kind of like shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
Adam and I talk a lot about just kind of life and like things and the existential dilemmas
We're
that
getting
are
some interesting conversations.
Being human.
Yeah.
And we've actually both kind of been, you introduced me to a really cool community here locally.
Yeah.
So I've been doing a lot of like breath work and women's circles and really just connecting with people. I know you're really working right now on potentially like starting up a men's circle.
Yeah.
And what do you think is, number one, I want to hear a little bit more about what that's going to look like or what you're excited about with that. But what do you think is lacking for men in general on the planet in terms of like expression?
Everything. Safe containers.
Yeah.
And speaking from my own experience and growing up in the generation of the John Wayne, if you will,
Sure.
right? The stoic. Most men know two emotions: anger and shutdown.
Yeah.
And that's it, right? Yeah. We weren't taught how to communicate. We weren't told that it was okay to have emotions. Everything that we were programmed with was, that's weak, that's not good.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't have a safe container. Most fathers weren't modeled to us that way either.
Mm-hmm.
It's very like, go to work and do the, very business-like orientated, right?
Mm-hmm.
They weren't really taught how to love, taught how to be in relationships. Like, really, I think a lot of men were just kind of left alone to figure things out on their own.
Right.
And I think because of actually the rise of the feminine woman, that model is no longer working, because women want, I think a lot of women want a different kind of connection.
Sure.
We
have a raised expectation of what it is to like be a man. It's not just go to work and
pay the bills and do those anymore.
Sure.
Right? Because a lot of women, they will connect through conversation.
Right.
And you are more in touch with your emotions, and that's how a lot of women like to connect.
Right.
Really challenging when a man doesn't know how to do that.
Right.
Hasn't had a safe container to know that that's okay.
Sure.
To express hurts and jealousy and fear and shame, and really to be vulnerable. And we haven't had that place.
Yeah. And that's what you're working on building right now with opening up the men's group.
Yeah, I want to open up this group. I'm gonna call it Aligned Men.
Mm-hmm.
So they can move more into alignment with that. I think having that space, oftentimes we will find it easier to share with strangers than people we know, especially our spouses or, parents or things like that. And so creating this space where men can come and talk about their issues, and not a therapy, and then getting support from other men of, oh yeah, I've been there, I've done that, and not have such a feeling of being alone. Because even, I have male friends, but not all of them really have that depth, that kind of authenticity about them. And so I wanted to create a space where it's kind of like an authentic experience for men to resource also off of for each other.
Awesome. It's so exciting. I'm so excited for you.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
I'm sad that I can't go to your group because I am not a man, but I know from like our women's circle, it's just so amazing to just have a space to show up to. And I mean, listeners, like if you can find like a community of people that are positively sharing and growing and learning together, like I just think that's such a valuable thing for people to have,
Yeah, I think, for me, it's just finding a place where people are human.
Yeah.
Where they're just really accepting the humanness and like what's going on, and not acting like everything's okay, and like want to connect. And that's been really beneficial and huge for me to find other people honoring the human experience.
Because it's like, I mean, especially with like social media, I mean, I feel like we have lost so much touch with what is actually reality, and it's that shit's hard, and it's okay that it's hard.
Right.
And people just run around like something's wrong, that life isn't perfect. And
Yeah, I think we've been kind of sold this happiness lie.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody wants to be happy.
Yeah.
And like, that's just one little emotion, right? Like, you're going to have sadness. We live in polarity, right? We're going to have happiness. We're going to have sadness. You know, we're going to have joy. We're going to have depression. Like, you need both. And at the exclusion of other, you're really cutting yourself off from the human experience.
Right. It's contrast. Like, you can't appreciate pure joy unless you've been in like the pits of sadness.
Right.
And so it's like having gratitude for both, or learning how to appreciate both.
You know? Yeah. And I think for me, it's come to I heard this saying one time where it was, what was it? Pain is not a punishment, and pleasure is not a reward.
Ooh, I love that.
They're normal human experiences.
Right.
And that's all emotions are. They're normal human. You're going to feel them. It's going to happen. And each one just has a different quality to it, right? Sure. Anger is going to have a certain quality to it. It has a different speed to it. It has heat, and, you know, sadness has coldness, and it's a very different kind of feeling. Yeah. And so, you know, and that's part of my work too, of doing the somatic work, of getting people to really notice those different qualities, and then accepting them as our friends. They're all our friends. They're all our teachers. You know, our emotions aren't meant to hurt us. They're not going to last. Yeah.
They're so impermanent.
They're not going to last.
They're so impermanent.
Right.
Yeah. Because they're just information, right? Like, that's the way that someone said that like, emotions are not directions, they're information.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Awesome. I love it. So let's talk a little bit about, there was an exercise that you had me do. We were hanging out on the beach.
Yeah.
And I love that. First of all, you don't have to be on the beach to do it, by the way. But it was such a great, like, really simple thing that I think a lot of people can apply. I actually shared it with my clients. I sent you that text.
Yeah. I'm glad it worked.
Yeah, it's so cool. So can you like walk someone through, like, let's say they're having anxiety or depression, or they're like feeling something and they're clear that something's off. Like, for me that day, it was like having that, like, fuck, I'm just anxious. Right. So how do you, what are the steps to walk someone that's like listening or watching through, like, that maybe struggles with like anxiety or depression, or something is going on that they want to like localize and sort of bring out and make friends with?
Yeah. I mean, one little asterisk or caveat to this would be like, I know you, so I know you're okay with going into your body.
Sure.
For some people that have had trauma and different experiences that tend to dissociate a lot, they're not safe in their body.
Got it.
So that experience, that process might be too much for them.
Okay.
It might be pretty overwhelming.
So just as like a disclaimer, if it's like very big past trauma, this is something you actually want to sit down and do with someone like guided, that's a professional.
Right. And you know, in that sense, it would be like you kind of touch into it and then go away, just as much as you could really handle. But I know, obviously, because I've worked with you, I know what you can handle.
Sure.
But the process is really dropping into your body. Where do I feel this in my body? When was the first time I experienced this? What does it have to say? What resources would I need? And you can talk, and then you can also look at it and be like, what would you like to tell your younger self, or that emotion?
Right.
And then you just kind of allow that to happen. Taking nice deep breaths and just allow that process to happen, and really kind of, again, completing that space that you're in. Yeah. Right. But really just asking, even just simply, what are you trying to tell me?
Yeah, because we did this, so I guess just to kind of explain to you guys, so we were at the beach, we were walking, and I was like, man, I'm just like anxious as fuck. And I think I actually told you, I think I'm just hungover. I'm like just anxious because I'm hungover.
Right.
Yes, Krissy Krash gets hungover sometimes. It's fine. I had tequila and not enough water. But I was like,
Always
no,
a
I'm
good
just,
combination.
I'm anxious because I'm hungover. I always get anxious because I'm hungover. And he's like, well, let's like walk through it. Right. And you asked me, you said, like, where am I, right? It was where am I feeling it in my body?
Right.
It was in my chest. And it was like, what did you ask me? So where do I feel it I felt it in my chest.
Yeah. Chest and your throat.
And my throat. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And then what did you ask me next?
I asked you when the first time you felt this.
That's right. When was the first time I felt it? Which I distinctly remember was being on a bus when I was like 13. It was like the first time I ever had like an anxiety attack.
Right.
And in that moment, then you asked me.
I asked you, what were you afraid of?
Yeah. And it was like nothing. It was just like it was just this fear of nothing. I just felt like I was not okay.
Right.
Right.
And then I asked you, what do you need to tell yourself?
Right. What do I need to tell
in that situation?
Little Kristen. And so it's almost like me loving adult Kristen looking in and almost being a parent for the little freaked out Kristen that's in there. And so I had said like, well, little baby Krissy Krash just needs to know that everything, like, you're okay.
Right.
And like instantly in that moment of just saying like, you're okay, I was just like, my body just like relaxed. I was like, oh, I'm okay. And it was like that. And it was God. And I was like, what the fuck, Adam?
Just on the dog beach,
right?
just handling it real fast.
I thought it was my hangover.
Right.
But is that like a good example of a lot of times too, some of that like built up somatic like energy that it's just sort of like it's been there for so long and it's just kind of like left over and you just kind of have to be aware of it? Or is it like triggers, combination of both?
Yeah, there's so many things that can go into it. I think, we have these energetic or kind of signature imprints in us.
Right. Like anxiety is a default mode for me in a lot of ways.
Right. So that signature has been with you for a lot of your life, probably developed early on. Right. And so as you start to kind of clean up and integrate those pieces, it'll become less and less of a habitual thing for you. But it's kind of like this charge that we carry around sometime, and we'll have ones that are more our default mode, and anxiety or anger or things like that. And so it's really completing this kind of felt signature that we've carried with us for a long time, and going through the process of reparenting yourself, being with yourself, not trying to add a story to it or come up with all the reasons why I'm feeling something.
Just allowing yourself to feel it.
I feel this.
Yes.
Right. I was listening to a thing today, and one of the guys, I don't remember what the man's name was, but he was saying the power of it is what it is. So it is what it is. I'm feeling anxious. Full stop.
It is. Not it is because.
It is what it is. What it is. And then you have the choice. And so now what am I going to do with it? Yeah. Can I change this? Can I accept it? Am I going to go in the story? Am I going to go, what do I need to do with it? But like, people talk, be with your emotions and be with yourself, but maybe a modern day kind of expansion of it is what it is that's what it is. It
just is what it is.
I'm anxious.
Right.
That's it.
Right. And it's okay. And instead of trying to figure out, well, where is it coming from and why is it here? It's just like, okay, well, it is what it is. And where is it in my body? And when did I first experience this? Right. And what could I, tell that version of myself? Yeah. And it's almost like it becomes like a quick, super quick thing you can do with yourself on a regular basis.
And you can, like well, I'm anxious, and it's because of all of these reasons.
Yeah, and I gave you like 900 reasons why I was anxious.
Right.
And really, it was none of the things.
None of that. You just needed to know that everything's okay right now.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Okay.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Now, we have talked a lot about trauma, and you and I debate on the word trauma. Like when we're talking about like childhood, I guess not debate on it. I just don't like the word trauma. And you're like,
it's a charged word.
It's a charged word.
It's a charged word.
But I think a lot of people these days are really becoming aware of like childhood traumas as like being something like impacts their lives right now, and not really knowing what to do with it. I think a lot of people much like the medical industry where we feel like we get sick, so we go to a doctor.
Right.
I think a lot of people say, well, I feel a certain way, so I'm going to go to a therapist. Not to say that a therapist is like a good or a bad thing. I think they're wonderful.
Me
but
too.
I think that there's a lot of work that people can do on their own. There's a lot of learning and things that they can do. So like someone who, let's say, is just starting to be like aware of trauma, like what does that actually mean? Because sometimes it's a scary word. People are like, I don't have trauma, like I didn't get, like beaten by my dad when I was a kid, or like what is that really, like what does that actually mean to say like, well, we have trauma, and like how do we handle it as adults?
Yeah, trauma is a charged word, like you said. Some people will call it a negative imprint.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what happens is there is an event,
mm-hmm.
whatever you want it to be, that charges your nervous system. It puts you in fight or flight, right? And since you can't do anything to resolve that, it'll leave a negative imprint in our subconscious, in our body, in all those ways,
mm-hmm.
right? So that's maybe how I try to explain it more. It was an event that really excited our nervous system that we didn't know how to deal with it. And usually it happens, very early on in our life. There's actually 3 stages where the brain rewires itself. It's at 7, 14, and then 21-ish early ages. And so, especially when we're young, we haven't developed a critical factor yet. Up until like age 7, we're basically in a hypnotic state.
Okay.
Right? We're in this theta state. And so we don't have the discernment of reality, if you will. Right? That's why kids are so gullible. They'll believe anything. They don't have the critical factor even in their brain.
Because there's no separateness from them and parent at that point. They're just like, everything is all one. They put so much of their reality into the people around them.
Right. So these are the negative imprints that we work with, and they'll show up as, say, negative beliefs or limiting beliefs in relationships to anything, right?
Like when people see patterns in their relationships, like, how do I keep it? I say it all the time to you, Adam. How do I keep ending up with the same guy?
Yeah, right. And so if you keep noticing patterns, that is an indication that there's probably a negative imprint at the root cause of it, right? If it's something with finances, if it's something with yo-yoing up and down in your workout, being consistent, inconsistent, going up and down in your weight. All of these have a negative imprint underneath them. That's why you see a lot of people with weight, like, oh, I'll do the work and it's really great and all this kind of stuff. And that's a very external change. But the underlying negative imprint, that charge behind it hasn't been integrated. So you integrate that negative imprint, complete it, and then this becomes normalized. Right? Because it's not an outlet for it anymore.
Right. We work on that a lot in KCIT too, in Crash Course, of like, you can't just work on the outside of the body. Like you have to work on the inside if you want to have something stick around on the outside.
Yeah. And I think that's I see it a lot. Most people want the external change. Right. And they think that's going to change the internal state, an internal charge. But you're looking in the wrong places. Right.
Well, and we were just talking about this before we turned on the mic. We should have just started this whole thing. We should have just turned this thing on when we fucking got here. But that a lot of people, like, they seek out the money, the job, the relationship, the fitness, and they think that is the thing that's going to get them the joy. It's like you were saying, it was the difference between like personal development and spiritual development. Was that the way you said it?
Yeah. And I think spiritual growth or spiritual development, ties in very much the same as personal development. I think I use the analogy of like personal development can sometimes be monopoly. Right. We're trying to change things to get an external. We're really after this external, right? I want, boardwalk and Park Place. Versus taking it from a point of I'm trying to expand and open up and see my patterns, see where I can like become more human, connect with more people, do those things. And from that internal state, everything else starts to manifest.
Starts to come in because you're in alignment with it.
Versus like, let me change my diet. Let me change my workout. Let me change this person.
Right.
Right.
But not focus on, well, how worthy do I feel like I am? Or how much do I love myself? Or
do I deserve this?
Do I deserve this?
What's
or
my belief around that?
Yeah, I hide behind like my physical body or.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, it's so interesting. And so many people, like, they chase that. They chase the external in search of joy. And it's like, then all of a sudden you get there and it's hollow.
Yeah. I mean, we've been programmed. We've been conditioned.
100%. 100%.
To seek that, you know, movies, television, parents, like conditioning happens.
Yeah. You can't help it.
You cannot help it.
You can't help it. Like we live in, I'm reading that book, Denial of Death, and they were talking about how like literally like culture itself is neurosis. Like it's just an agreed upon neurosis that then it's healthy. Like this is the story that we've all agreed on. And so therefore it's okay because we all say it's okay. And then we live into that like it's actually reality.
Right. And that's all reality is like a group consensus of that means chair.
Right. Exactly.
That's all it is. It could be called anything else, but we've all decided we've got enough agreement that you know, that means chair.
Yeah.
And same with language and anything else. Like you think about different languages. They all agree that, that means that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
we're good.
And it's all based on like their values as well. Right.
Right.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's so fucking interesting. So how did you get into like a lot of the trauma work? Like how did that start for you?
Through pain.
Yeah, personal pain.
Through personal pain.
Desire for self-growth. What do you feel like has been the biggest like transformation? You know me, I love transformation.
Yeah.
What do you feel like has been the biggest transformation for you?
Accepting my humanness.
Yeah.
It's just accepting my humanness. That coming to the point in the place of realizing that we identify with our habits. We think we are our habits, that it's fixed.
Oh, I'm just lazy. Oh, I'm just unmotivated.
Right?
I'm just a all or nothing person.
That it's permanent. Like that's just the way I am.
Right.
No.
It's the way you've been.
It's the way you've been. It's the way what you accepted as reality. It's the way you've been conditioned.
Yeah.
You know, it's been the way that you learn to, you know, our primary motivations are love and safety.
Right.
That's all we're really ever trying to get.
At the end of the day, anything that feels wrong, that feels right, that feels anything.
Love and safety.
Love and safety.
Is all you want. Sometimes people are like, I want success, but actually they don't feel safe trying to be successful.
Right.
Right.
And they think that success means, I know for me, like building a business and things like that, I always equated success with security.
Right.
Yeah.
You become secure without it.
You can become secure without it. And you can feel insecure with it.
Absolutely.
And like we said, you know, about having those old patterns, I noticed that, you know, as my business started to grow and took off, I noticed I still had an old, very deeply ingrained pattern of like, I'm not okay. I'm not safe. I need to work harder. Everything's going to fall apart. Even though like, you know, 10 years of growth and work and building and it's never once fallen apart.
Right. You have tons of evidence to dispute that.
Yes. But on the inside, there is this constant like chatter and pattern of everything's going to fall apart, must work harder. Oh my God, any moment now, everything is going to fly apart.
And so then then I would work with that and be like, oh, when did you first start experiencing that?
Where do I feel that in my body?
Where did that come from, right? Usually probably in something that happened and growing up in our environment that created that charge.
Sure.
That's always been in there. And so, yeah, really accepting that, like, the way we've tried to survive, and it's really a beautiful thing. We think of say something like that, of this charge, or that there's something wrong with me, right? Mm-hmm. But the way I've kind of started transforming work with it is like, I look at it as the innocence of a child. Mm-hmm. Doesn't know anything. Mm-hmm. You look at how little a child knows, is nothing. but yet through these, brilliant means of not knowing anything, they learn ways to survive, keep love, keep attachment, even if it's unhealthy attachment, even if it's, some form of love, some for it, because we need it for survival. So without knowing how to do these things, we do it. And then we think there's something wrong with us. Where actually it was this like brilliant
brain computer
system, right? This brilliant soul, this brilliant system that devised all these means of maintaining love and safety. And once we have garnered love and safety or security, but those patterns have never matured or never been integrated, and so they're still running. Right? They're still in the background. They're still going. It's like you had a bunch of windows on. Well, I didn't close that window out yet.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's where you said we live inside of, well, this is just who I am. It's like, no, you've just had that window on your computer open.
Right.
If you can close it.
You can close it.
Yeah.
Right. It's just a habit.
Yeah.
And we're such habitual creatures. I think one of the greatest strengths that we have is our ability to adapt.
Sure.
And through neuroplasticity and what they've been talking about in cognitive science and the ability of the brain to change. And that's actually one of our greatest strengths. And we never lose that ability. Some habits are really ingrained, really hard, like literally in our nervous system, in our brain, there's grooves. It's been shown. And people, I think, believe that the process is, or they want it to be faster than it actually is.
No. People are impatient? Is that what
right? Like the process of change takes a while. Yeah. Because literally our habits are in our nervous system, especially emotional habits. And so that's a really strong current, if you will.
Yeah.
And so to divert the river, if you will, you have to start making new choices to weaken that path. And so the brain will start having new paths.
And they're harder in the beginning. That's why things over time get easier, and we think it's going to be hard all the time.
Because we learn through repetition.
Right.
Right. You have to do a new thing over. There's 21 days to a new habit and all that kind of stuff, especially when it comes to emotional work or even if you're skill training, right? There's, the 10,000 hours and like the repetition of over and over and over and over in a mindful way.
And that's the key, right? Mindfully creating those habit patterns.
Yeah. And that's why I really talk about going with your patterns. Until you're really aware of what you're doing, it's really hard to change.
So instead of trying to change something that you don't know what's wrong, but you know it's wrong, so you're going to change it, versus like, well, let's see what it is that I actually do.
What do I actually do?
Because it probably serves you in some way too. There's probably benefits to that exact same pattern that doesn't serve you.
Absolutely.
You as well.
When I was taking my neuro-linguistic programming training, that's one of the tenets they talked about, that every action that anybody has a positive intent.
Yes.
Absolutely everything you do has a positive intent. And so you can say, what's the positive intent behind this? What am I trying to do? And then starting to work with it. All right, what do I do? I've had a person come with me in working with anger. And he was like, well, what do I do when I'm angry? I was like, well, I'm not even going to touch that. It's like, we need to start noticing when you first start getting angry, right? Is it a clenching of the jaw? Is it a tightening of the eyebrows? Like, when do you first start? Is it breathing? When do you first? Because then we can start to actually work with it.
Right. We can't start dealing with the anger until we know, well, what are the triggers that are like getting you to anger?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what's your process?
Right.
We have a process for everything.
And that's all of this, right? That's everything we've been talking about. Physically, spiritually, it's all fucking patterns.
It's all patterns.
It's all patterns. It's patterns of pain. It's patterns of movement. It's patterns of speaking. It's patterns of thinking. It's patterns of feeling. It's all just patterns.
It's all patterns.
And it's all made up. Like, none of it has to be in your future because it was in your past.
Absolutely. We have the amazing human, that's the human superpower.
Yes. The human superpower.
The human superpower is adaptability.
Yes.
We can live in any climate. We can speak any language, if I was born in China, I could probably speak Chinese like that, right? Anybody has the ability. So our adaptability and our ability to change is our biggest superpower. And yet it's one of our like Achilles heel of people like really resisting change.
Because they don't necessarily believe it or want to do the work to get there.
Yeah, well, yeah. They don't want to go through the pain,
the uncomfortableness,
you know,
familiarity.
It's I kind of call it a void.
Yes, God, that fucking void, man. So we had so everyone that's listened to the podcast about me quitting online dating, I was very afraid of going into the void, and Adam had been spending some time there about just like, he's like, you just got to be alone. You were like, you just have to be single and alone and just accept that this might just be the way it is.
Yeah.
Right. And same thing with like, I guess a lot of like these feelings like, well, what if I'm just going to be anxious forever? And that's just the way it is. Like, how do I just live inside of that and be at peace?
Right.
And the funny thing is when I went into that stupid void, it took me a long time to get in there to accept, just stop fighting it, surrender to the fucking universe. But then like you get into this void and it's like so peaceful and it's just okay.
It is just okay.
Yeah.
It will just be okay. It might be really rough for a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, it might be rough for a little longer.
Yeah.
Depends how, you know,
depends on how often you repeat your pattern.
It could be a long process, you know. Sometimes things are really, really buried in there deep. But that ability to surrender, you know, I think it's what was it? I can't come up with the equation right now, but pain is going to be inevitable.
Yes.
So here was the equation: pain plus resistance equals suffering.
Yes. Pain plus resistance equals suffering, because pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional.
Suffering is optional.
Yes.
Right. So once you got rid of your resistance and allowed that to happen,
there was no suffering. Even if there is like pain or like aloneness or uncomfortable feelings, you can just to be with it versus fighting it.
Yeah. Just be with it.
Yeah.
You know, I think we don't want to be with uncomfortable things.
And we're trained in our society that you shouldn't have to be with uncomfortable things.
Right. But we do.
Yeah.
It's again, it's that contrast. It's the polarity. Like it's
doing the hard thing.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But allowing it to happen and realizing it's not permanent. It's not forever. And even if it is, how can I work with it?
Yes. Because
even if I'm always going to be anxious, how do I work with it?
Right.
Right?
You can't go into the void of like a surrender, being like, well, I'll surrender as long as I know that this is going to go away.
Right. Because then you're putting conditions on things, right? Well, if then, right? When you're playing the if then game,
it's all bad.
Right. The if then game just doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah. You know, just, okay, if this is the way it's going to be, how do I work with it?
Yeah.
Right. How do you work with how you are?
Yes.
And allow that to be okay. And once you really start to work with your pattern, things will actually start to change as you work with it.
Yes. Versus resisting it and pushing against it.
Right.
Resistance is futile.
Yeah. Just go with it.
Yeah. I love it. Speaking of going with it, we had made a list.
Oh, yes.
We had made a list.
Yes.
Of books, because obviously Adam is a fucking knowledgeable dude.
Thank you.
And I like to pick his brain for books all the time. So whenever he's reading, I literally have a list in my phone of like books from Adam that I should read. Originally it was like going to be a book list, but I've realized that all of the books that are in my book list are things.
Are they?
They are.
That's great.
They are. So what I wanted to do was go through our top 5.
Oh yeah. It was challenging to come up with a top 5, and even just 5, actually. It was really challenging.
It was, but you know what? Like, I got through it. I think you got through it also.
I did.
Hang on, let's get this.
You got yours?
I got mine. I have to
somewhere.
figure out how to get that thing. There it is. We'll just edit this part out. There. No, there it is. All right. Don't peek at my list.
Okay.
So every show we do a top 5 of something, and then we compare our magical lists of top 5. We decided to do top 5 transformational books. Now Adam was like, I could only have 5?
Yeah.
What do you mean I could only have 5?
Yeah.
But I think that you were able to narrow it down. I had some that were like, I was just hands down. I'm like, these are my top 5. But I look forward to getting into some of yours as well. So it doesn't have to be like number 1 is the best one or something, but we'll just start at the top. So we'll see where we are. So top 5 most transformational books per Krissy Krash and Adam Kristoffer. What did you get for number 1?
It's called The Book, The Taboo of Knowing Who You Are.
Ooh.
It's by Alan Watts.
Okay. What did you love about it?
It went through the struggle of what it's like to actually be authentic in the backlash you get from society and from people of knowing who you are and being authentic. It's a really, Alan Watts is one of my favorite teachers, but
okay,
it's a good book.
I'm just going to take your list and I'm just going to keep it after this, and I'm going to add all of your books on your list to my list. Awesome. I love it. So the book. Mine was The Power of Now. Power of Now, I'm assuming you've read. Have you read The Power of Now? Yeah,
yes.
I'm sure you have. Yes, Power of Now was what got me into meditation. Had me understand really the concept. I love their concept of clock time.
Yeah.
And that like we live in this self-described society of like clock time, but that like time isn't real, but it runs our lives.
Yeah.
So I really try to spend parts of my life in now and then in clock time, right? Because clock time is functional, but like then there's times we just need to be here now.
Right. Be here now.
That's
always a good one.
Yeah. I love
so
that
is
one.
Sit, Stay, Heal.
Sit, Stay, Heal.
Yeah.
Is that a dog book?
No, that's like a little phrase that I've heard from many people in the Eastern tradition of you sit with emotion, you stay with the emotion, you heal.
Oh, not like heal like a dog heal.
Right.
So that goes along with everything we've been talking about sitting with it.
Sit, stay, heal.
Heal. I love that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Staying is the hard part.
Staying's the hard part. I can sit for a minute, but then I'm like, squirrel.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is kind of off topic of the 5, but using the breath to come back.
God, breathing is so important.
Yeah. Just keep coming back. Yeah. Stay.
I was just listening to were we talking about this? Was I listening to a podcast about that humans are the only animal that holds its breath?
We were talking about that.
We have so many good conversations. We should just start a podcast that's just us hanging out having conversations.
I'm down. I'm so down.
So crazy, right? Because like breath is just so grounding and we have such dysfunctional breathing.
It's super healing. Yeah. Oxygen really helps. That's why Wim Hof has really become super popular. The Wim Hof method. Oxygen in our system. It's a great indicator to know when we're stressed, when we're holding our breath, when we start to spin, when we start to dissociate. We and really paying attention to our breath, staying with our breath, stops a lot of that.
Yeah, just coming back to just like a couple of big deep breaths, and all of a sudden you're like back to planet Earth again.
I'm back. I'm back into myself.
Yeah.
It's huge.
I love it. What was your number 2?
Attached by Amir Levine.
Nice.
And Attached is about attachment styles. How we attach to specifically in personal relationships that we've probably learned as children, and actually now even moving more so of our attachment styles will show up in business as well.
And we were talking about that,
things like that. So really learning, I almost think learning your attachment style is like learning another love language.
Sure.
How somebody attaches, if they're an avoidant, if they're kind of anxious, if they're both, if they're disorganized.
Yeah. I wonder if that shows up in sports too. Like I would be curious if how someone attaches in relationships and how they attach in business, if that applies to like how they attach in like sports and performance.
It's gonna show up throughout.
Yeah.
If someone's an avoidant, they'll probably not be super good with working out. They'll find I'll do it later. I'll get that in later. An anxious person will get it done right away. Right. disorganized will kind of go back, oh, I'm into it, and then I go away, then I'm going to go into it again. And like there's a lot of back and forth with that one as well. A secure person, securely attached, will probably just go along, no problem, do it, all right, on to the next, and there's no tension there.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's a really good book. I think it's super important for people to really know their attachment styles. Again, to work with their patterns.
Right.
Super helpful for them, super helpful for your partners, and then also how that translates into really all areas of our life. Because again, there's negative imprints with it, so it's still gonna it's gonna run things.
Sure.
You know, it's that subconscious that is really running the show.
Right, and we don't even realize it. We're just like operating like, well, this is just who I am and what I do. And this is just how I.
The illusion of control.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Oh, God. So my second one was Secrets of the Millionaire Mind.
Oh, that's a great one.
It's a great book. Yeah. I think that so many people, especially in this day, know very little about money.
Yeah.
And I think that it does a disservice to society as a whole. So I'm super grateful for people that have mentors in my life that have very much taught me how to have like a wealth mindset and like how to really recognize my patterns and beliefs about money.
It's everything's relationship.
Yeah.
What's my relationship to money? You know, I'm reading this other book and they were talking about foundational beliefs, clearing up your foundational beliefs. And we were talking, we just really should just record our conversation. Right. So we'll get into these beliefs things and how that even works with our brain, right? Because we have this, it's called the RAS, the reticular activating system.
Yes.
And that basically works in the sense of if I want a new car, I'm going to start noticing cars everywhere.
Sure.
If I'm looking for shoes, I'm going to start noticing people's shoes, right? It's kind of like the system, our search engine.
Yeah.
New car. Okay, let me start searching for it.
Right.
If I have a belief about money, it's going to look for evidence of that.
Right.
If I have a belief that like in relationships, everybody always leaves, I'm going to start looking for evidence for that, for any little thing. What was it? Confirmation bias. Well, I'm going to start looking for evidence and get confirmation of that belief. And then what people have like really kind of vogue called it, oh, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes. Right? Because we've been so on the lookout for it.
You're on the lookout for it. And also that belief has an energetic charge. And so I'm taking that energy into whatever I'm doing.
Right. Money.
Business, wealth, relationship. My underlying belief has this energy with them, right?
And this is why people that feel like, well, stuff always goes wrong and I can just never get ahead, you know, whenever. And I noticed this for myself, and I got this from Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, of having like, you have like a thermostat for wealth. And I noticed at one point my thermostat was that like I could have $1,000 in my bank, and as soon as my bank account would hit $1,000, something would happen. My car would break down. I would have an unexpected bill, and I had to actually work on mentally raising my financial thermostat to be comfortable with holding more money, and then energetically I'm not attracting those things.
Right. Yeah. And that goes with the idea of expansion and contraction. I've heard it also called set points or upper limits.
Yes. Upper limits.
An upper limit problem. Gay Hendricks wrote a really good book, I think called The Big Leap.
The Big Leap. Yes. Oh, so it should have been on our list.
The Big Leap. So that's the upper limits problem.
It's a bonus book.
Right. And we have limits to how much joy we can have, how much connection. We have a set point for how much we can handle. And then something will bring us down.
Right. Like in relationships, you have a set point for how good your relationship can go before someone's like, got to start a fight.
Because we're uncomfortable with it. Yeah. And we'll think it's the content of the fight is what is actually happening. But a lot of the times you reached your threshold in a positive way. Right. And so you got to like destabilize.
Bring it down to where it's comfortable.
Bring it down. Like how we started the conversation of like, the somatic tension relief and how that, you know, you got to bring it down. But yeah, raising your upper limits, raising your set point, raising what you can handle in a comfortable way is huge. But looking at that underlying belief Super important.
It's so great.
Yeah.
What'd you give her number 3?
Oh, where are we at?
Number 3.
Sure. I'm going to go with smile at fear.
Oh, I have that on my list right now from one of
Yeah.
our combos.
Yeah.
Why do you love it?
Fear is a big driver, a big stopper. And I liked it because it really showed me in a very kind of human, compassionate way how to work with fear. Not just bulldoze it or
run from it, hide from it.
Run from it, hide from it. People be like, well, you know, or you're afraid, but just go and do it anyways. And that's courage, right?
Right.
But fear is a teacher. Emotions are teachers, but you can smile at it, right? You can welcome it as a friend.
Have gratitude for it.
Thank you for stopping me. Thank you for showing me like, oh, maybe there's something there that I need to look at, that I need to work at, because it's there for a purpose. And so learning to smile at it, learning to work with it in a very kind of gentle way.
Non-judgmental.
Yeah, you know, and I think that's something that people, you know, our inner critics, the bats of our inner critics, and just be fucking brutal.
Oh God.
You know,
if yours are as mean as mine are, man.
Just brutal.
Oh, they're brutal.
And so taking that gentleness,
yeah,
and smiling at it and welcoming it as your friend and as your teacher, and knowing that it's not there to hurt you.
Yeah.
So it really taught me how to really work, not just, you know, this was specifically fear, but working with anything else that I've found kind of uncomfortable.
Right. Like how
uncomfortable.
You learn how to do it with fear, and then you can take it and apply it to anything.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love it. Awesome. My third one was, this is actually a newer book and it's really popular right now, is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Oh, yeah.
Have you read that?
Yeah.
Of course you have. I really appreciate that as like a getting started in personal development kind of book. I think it's a super easy read and just very straightforward, like how to just not give so many fucks about things that don't matter, but also to just own the fact that like we are the thing. One of my favorite parts of that was when he talks about how fucking entitled we are, that we feel like life should be so great and we are so entitled to the fact that everything should be easy, and then we get so angry that it's not. And it's just such a straightforward, anyone who's struggling in life, I think it's such a great getting started into personal development book.
Yeah, I think that I could riff off that for a long time.
Yeah. What did you get for number 4?
But I won't. The talent code. I like the talent code because it's for athletes, but it specifically uses athletes. But I liked it how they talked about learning and patterns and repetitions, and the subplots are how that is wired into your nervous system.
Interesting.
Right. So focused practice, mindful practice, how to practice these things. And you can see that wiring goes into any habit that we have.
Nice. So
mindfully paying attention to something as you're practicing it is going to be much more beneficial, going to change a lot faster than I'm just going to do this over and
zoning
over
out.
and over and over and over and over and expecting that to happen in a fast time frame.
Right. It's like deep work.
It's mindfully being in the moment, doing what you're doing, paying attention, and then that's going to really change things, you know. But it's a good read. It talks about, like, you know, how these kind of obscure places created all this talent. And so they started looking around at, well, what are these people doing? What do they all have in common, right? Like some soccer players in Brazil, this one place developed all these amazing players, right?
Didn't a whole bunch of like Nobel Prize winners all come from like the same city or something?
Right, all the same area,
yeah.
right? And this like little place in Texas like created all these singers, and this one place, like no name place in Russia, developed all these profound tennis players. And what were they doing? And it's really interesting.
Cool. I'm so excited to read all your books on all of my travels. My fourth one was How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, that's such a good one.
It's such a great, again, like just learning how to, on a base level, be a really awesome human being, but also how to I don't even know how to explain, just how to like get along with people, how to create positive relationships. I think that the subtle art of being a good person and building genuine relationships with people is very much lost.
Yeah. I think a lot of adults really struggle to find adult friends.
Yeah.
And to make adult friends. Kids are really good at it.
They're so good at it because they give no fucks.
Right. Like, hey, you want to play? Yeah, cool. Yeah. All right.
Hey, you want to be friends? Cool. You want to be my best friend? Awesome.
Right. Do you want to play again tomorrow? Okay, cool. And, you know, I think we've really lost that. But yeah, that's such a good book.
So good. It's a little tough. It's a little wordy.
It's wordy, but it also gives you structure on like not being so self-orientated and how that really, really helps you. Right. To gain those connections, but just being interested in other people.
Right. It's not just about us.
Right. Like
social media world.
Right. Underlying that is, you know, how to gain friends is be interested in other people.
Yeah. Actually give a shit.
And this is the way you do it, right? Yeah. These are the questions you can ask, like very simple, straightforward. But yeah, really good book, I think.
One of the things I took away from that was writing like handwritten cards. So whenever someone joins my program, my 12-week crash course in transformation, we always send them like handwritten welcome letters because we just want people to feel loved and appreciated and connected. It's just like those little things that you can do to be that for someone, you know,
that they matter,
that they fucking matter, right? Because everyone thinks they don't matter. We could have a whole other podcast about not mattering. We probably will. Adam's just going to be on the podcast every week from now on. It's now It's now the Krissy Krash and Adam Kristoffer show. It's fine.
I love it. It's great. We could totally do it.
I love it. What did you get for your fourth?
Well, I went first, so I think this is my last one.
Okay.
Probably something that people have read, but it's something I really like to go back to from almost every year is The 4 Agreements.
Yes. Oh, it's such a good one.
Very simple.
So simple.
But we lose sight of it every day.
100%.
And I like it for its simplicity, you know, be impeccable with your word. And I really like its simplicity and its effectiveness that it can really change and not even, you know, we use the word change a lot, but maybe a better word would be enrich your experience.
Right.
I think it really enriches your experience when you're following those models, those insights, you know, it kind of gives a focus to your life. It gives you something to focus on. Like today, I'm going to be impeccable with my word.
Right. Just very simple. And that's the thing I love about it. Like you said, is the simplicity of it. And it's a very easy read. Like another one that if someone is just getting into personal development and how to have more joy and love and relationship, it is such a good starting point.
Yeah. I think if you just follow that book.
Yeah. You could live like the greatest life.
That's really, right. It's that simple.
Yeah.
But you know, simple's not easy.
Right. It's true. They're two distinct things. Interestingly enough, The Power of Now I found for free on like some leave one, take one bookshelf somewhere, and The 4 Agreements, same thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They were both like put in my life randomly in the universe. Like, here's a book.
Yeah, I use the library system a lot.
Yeah.
They have a lot of free audiobooks and other apps that you can just use and download.
No kidding.
Yeah. Well, our library in Orange County here in California, they have this app called Hoopla, and it might be in other systems, but I can borrow up to 6 audiobooks a month.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. Hoopla. Look this one up, people.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it's just.
Go to your library. There's tons of free stuff.
There's so much good stuff in the library.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Pretty much everything you can buy, probably in the library. Yeah.
I love it. Are you up or am I up?
You're up.
I'm up. Last one.
Yeah.
I said The Alchemist.
Oh, it's great.
Oh, it's such a beautiful book, right?
It is.
And again, actually, he has another book called Hippie. Have you read Hippie?
I haven't read Hippie. I've read several of his, but I haven't read that one.
Hippie is part of the reason that I am selling all my shit and traveling the world. because
careful if you read that one.
Yeah,
people.
Careful if you read that one. But The Alchemist I thought was just beautiful because it was so much just about life as this magical journey and trusting the universe and trusting that things just show up in front of you. And I've really been focusing on living my life that way, and I think it's just such a beautiful message. And again, another easy read, you know, like just such a fun, beautiful read with so many great little nuggets.
Yeah, you know, he's such a great writer and storyteller and metaphors that you can really pull from that. And yeah, I really like the messages of kind of the magicalness that we have gotten away from, of trying to control and really realizing that life is working for you.
Yes.
Everything has a positive intention. We may not like it or want it when it's happening, but everything is actually working for its highest good.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that book really exemplifies that.
Yeah. Such a good one. Such a good one. Well, hopefully you guys are going to take this list and run with it. I am personally right now stealing Adam's list, putting it in my pocket, because those are good ones for sure. But yeah, first of all, thank you for coming on today and coming over and doing this. I have a feeling we'll probably be doing many more of these.
It's so much fun. I hope so.
But also I just want to really acknowledge you. Like, I want to acknowledge you for being, number one, an amazing friend. Like, I'm super grateful that you're in my life.
Thank you.
But also just for being committed to who you're committed to being for the world. Like, I think, like you said, committing to owning your own humanness, there is not enough of that in the world. And just kind of watching you through the last couple of years just kind of grow and develop and build your own practice, you know, and start influencing other people, I think is just such a gift to the planet. So I'm just so grateful for you, and thank you for everything that you do. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I love you too.
All right, I'm gonna shut this shit off. Shut this shit off.